Today is Sunday, February 3rd, 2019, and this is Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio, video coverage of your Boston Celtics. Evan Valenti filling in for Adam Kaufman here on this Sunday in episode number 300. That's 300, featuring Mass Live's Tom Westerholm, is brought to you by betonline.ag. CLNS Media and BetOnline are offering you a 50% sign-on bonus if you use our code CLNS with your first deposit. Go to clnsmedia.com/win. Use the promo code CLNS50 for your 50% sign-on bonus today with betonline.ag. And today's show is also brought to you by 1-800. Want to buy tickets at an affordable price? Just log on to ONEIN100.co. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher. Make sure you follow us on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, CLNS Media, for more post-game stuff from the Celtics. Of course, more thoughts from the Garden Report, from everybody in terms of, we have so much Celtics coverage at CLNS. Make sure you follow along with us at YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and CLNSmedia.com. But coming up next, Tom Westerholm. Welcome inside Celtics Beat, everybody. Evan Valenti filling in for Adam Kaufman. He'll be back next week. He's in Atlanta with the BBZ, hanging out with the Super Bowl stuff. So hopefully safe travels back for Adam. He'll be back next week with more great things. And I actually kind of feel bad just because this has been such a whirlwind of a week in terms of just NBA basketball news. And we're joined by Mass Live's Tom Westerholm. Tom, you know, kind of a slow week, right? Like, this has been a pretty ordinary, run-of-the-mill, print a gamer, and we're all done here. This has been pretty mild in terms of news coverage, I think.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot to do on our end. We're just looking for things to get us through February 7th. Not unlike the Pelicans.
Let me ask you a question, though. Like, this is a legit question. Is the drama that surrounds the NBA, like all this trade stuff, is this actually more fun and more appealing and more interesting than the games themselves?
I mean, I'm sure some people think so. I don't. Like, personally, I am pretty ready to get back to watching hoops tonight. But I mean, I think that it's definitely something that drives the casual fan. Certainly, I think that it's definitely something. And obviously, it's all very interesting stuff for everybody, casual and hardcore alike. But I think it is something that definitely drives people who, maybe basketball is their second favorite sport, and they, sort of enjoy watching the Celtics on the side. Like, for them, yeah, sure. I mean, this is high drama stuff. This is the stuff that fills up your Twitter timeline. This is what what you read on the train on the way to work or whatever it might be. So, I mean, I think it at the very, very least, it's a great, sort of industry for the NBA to capitalize on. In addition to the games. And yeah, I mean, for me personally, I would say no, but I think it's definitely, I think there's definitely a lot of people for whom this is more fun. This is like their favorite time of the NBA calendar.
It's unbelievable. Whether it's this time or the summertime, like, there's just so much movement that happens in the NBA, and like rumors about movement and people just piling on. Like, this is the Super Bowl week, right? This is the biggest game of the year for the most important, American sport of the year. At least that's what we're told, right? Yeah. All I've heard about all week is more about where is Anthony Davis playing. The Knicks traded Kristaps Porzingis. Kyrie says a couple of things. Like, this week has been more about what the hell is going on in the NBA more than anything else Super Bowl related. Like, the only thing that I can remember vividly from this, group of interviews during Super Bowl week is Guillermo from the Jimmy Kimmel Show going on and making people laugh all over the place. Like, that's the most memorable NFL storyline versus Anthony Davis wants to go somewhere. Kristaps Porzingis gets shipped to Dallas. Kyrie's being weird. Where's LeBron? Like, LeBron comes back. Like, this has been such a ridiculous week of basketball. It's overshadowed the friggin' Super Bowl, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think, free idea for anybody down there in Atlanta. Like, start asking these guys about the Anthony Davis rumors. See if we can get some.
That's actually actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I would read it. I think I'll be curious to see how sustainable it is. I mean, I think, all of these big market teams are obviously like very interested in all of these super high level interest guys. You know, if it all gets settled down this summer, you know, if Anthony Davis ends up in LA or Boston or New York or wherever, if Kyrie ends up wherever, you know, if these guys are sort of in places where, you know, things get sort of settled, I will be curious if this is sort of an apex of it, because those guys will be settled, and, you know, Giannis might be the next logical one, but he seems pretty happy, and Milwaukee's just rolling. So, you know, this might be, at least for now, the pinnacle of a lot of it, because people have been building up the Anthony Davis stuff for a long time, and it's just now sort of hitting. So I do think that this is, you know, that there's a chance that this is as loud as it gets, at least for a few years here. But also, you know, it's the NBA, and it never ceases to sort of shock. So I think, you know, don't want to rule anything out, but people have been building up to this Anthony Davis situation for a long time.
Full disclosure for everybody listening, we're taping this on a Friday before the Sunday, so which is great, because actually Tom and I were DMing and talking about, like, okay, we're gonna do this. We have this Kyrie, media op before, early Friday morning. Like, let's do it after that. And, I obviously was like, yeah, it's smart. It's really smart. But I didn't think he would come out and make news like he did on Friday, where he basically lit the internet on fire, and you had different media outlets all over the place taking little snippets of his conversation with the media and running with it like it was just like the most important thing of the day. And you had so much, I just want to say, like, misinformation, like the way people are misleading it, because when you go back and listen to Kyrie's press conference, like, you end up coming, like, I don't know about you, Tom, I come away with, like, Kyrie is sick and tired of all this media conjecture, all this BS, all you guys stirring up all this trouble. Meanwhile, like, I'm trying to focus on basketball, focus on getting my team right, because we're not playing the way we should be. And now the entire time that I have all this media availability, I have to talk to you guys about what I might be doing in a couple of months instead of focusing on what's the task in front of us. Like, people are trying to be like, oh, Kyrie, he's so non-committal. He said, ask me July 1st. That's what I'm going to do. And yet, like, if you watch the whole thing, the tone of the entire press conference I thought was, pretty mild, to be frank.
Yeah, I think so. A few things on this. I do think that ask me on July 1st, the way that he said that, I did think that it was not. It didn't sound quite the way that a lot of people took it. With people took it as like, oh, he's decommitting from re-signing with Boston, and like, I didn't necessarily take it that way. Especially once you saw it, it was just like he said it like very dismissive, just like he was trying to like shoo that question away. Sort of was kind of what I took from that. But I will say, for all of his talk about, the media's been doing this, the media's been doing that, I mean, he hasn't been asked about this stuff since the first time he was in New York this season, and that was back in October. And that was because he made this preseason proclamation. It would have been really repetitive and, sort of annoying to be like asking him all the time, like, Kyrie, are you still thinking this way? Are you still thinking this way? And so it has been quite some time since he's been asked this stuff, and he could have made it even longer until the next time that I was asked this stuff if he had said something along the lines of, my plans haven't really shifted. I'm still, we're trying to work through this season. I don't want to like say anything for sure yet, but, I'm still planning on what I said before the preseason. And he didn't do that. So, I think that there's part of the reason you talked about our conversation and how, we talked about waiting until after he said that, after he did his press conference. And honestly, like, I would have been very surprised if he didn't say, I would have been surprised if he did sort of shut everything down, because that's not really the way that he operates in these sort of scrums. He's not really the type of guy to just like say the thing that everybody wants to hear. And that is often a good thing. He's his own person. He's thinking his own way, and I think there's a lot of good to that. But also, I would have been surprised if he had just come to the media and been like, people ask him the question and he gives them exactly what they want to hear. Like, that doesn't super line up with his personality, at least. In my experience covering him.
Right. I'm not really shocked that he didn't come out and say, like, hey, like, I'm going to commit to the Boston Celtics in 2019 and beyond. It doesn't shock me that he hasn't said that, really. I mean, he did the whole thing before the season where he's like, if you plan on having me, I'd love to come back here. I see myself re-signing here and, for long term. He said it, on Friday. This is, he says, quote, "I still have confidence in Boston and what they can promise for the future, what we have in terms of our pieces." That's what excited me about a lot of things. The beginning of the season was the opportunity to come into the season, really just doing what we plan on doing, set a goal and go after it, and then see what happens at the end of the season. That was the plan before. That's still the plan now. Obviously, Boston is still ahead of that race. That's just where it stands. So, take that little bunch, right, and just say, okay, when everybody is flipping out of ask me on July 1st and da-da-da-da, there's this giant paragraph where he talks about, hey, if we set out to do what we're supposed to do and we, go to the NBA Finals or whatever and we're still, clicking as a unit and Danny commits to, going out there and making this team better and improving it like he probably pitched Kyrie beforehand, then there's going to be no problem here. This is the one thing that is getting me absolutely crazy. And, I think that this past week has been one of the dumbest weeks in fan reaction history. I really, the amount of stupidity that has gone on, I think is insane. And I also think it shows you how much, Clutch controls the media narrative so much. I don't know about you, Tom, but for the past week, it has been easier to find for me, easier to spot the people that have Clutch as one of their sources. It's just because people are like, oh, Anthony Davis is only going to the Lakers, right? This is the only thing that matters, the only thing that's going to happen. And meanwhile, everybody that's probably a Celtics fan or has a brain is like, well, wait a minute. Why would you trade Anthony Davis to a team that can't offer you the best package? I'm not trying to say this from a Boston perspective, but before the Knicks traded Kristaps Porzingis, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to wait until the summer when I know what pick the Knicks have. And then we can somehow convince them to put, Porzingis and maybe Kevin Knox, maybe that pick into a trade for Anthony Davis. Why would you trade Anthony Davis before that stuff before the lottery is set? They just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And here we are with Kyrie. People are just making grand proclamations, but when you really sit here and analyze it, it looks still to me that Boston's still kind of in the lead spot, and if they do what they're supposed to do, they're going to have Irving in the uniform next year. I don't understand why people are getting crazy.
No, I think that's the right read. I think that, I think that it's reasonable to say that there is a chance the Celtics don't re-sign Kyrie. I think that, saying that, okay, well, him giving a preseason proclamation that he's planning to re-sign doesn't mean that he is for sure going to re-sign. I think that's reasonable. I think you can say all of those things. And I think you can also say, okay, but the Celtics are probably in the lead here. I mean, and I think that, even aside from him saying that, because obviously, what else is he going to say? But I mean, just when you look at the situation, obviously if the Celtics trade for Anthony Davis, I think that is the type of thing that would make Kyrie really want to stay. And, having Kyrie there might be the type of thing that makes Anthony Davis want to stay. And, there's going to be a lot of leaks and a lot of rumors that counteract that because, there's other people who want Anthony Davis elsewhere. So, and I think, Anthony Davis might be one of them for now. I think that's worth considering as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot made of the fact, because Kyrie was considered to be certain to be going to Boston, at least from sort of a national perspective. I think there's going to be a lot made of the fact that, he didn't come out and just completely say it in his press conference. But I do think that the easy read, sort of the correct read on the situation right now is that he's annoyed with the media. He's annoyed with all these rumors, and he is still probably, the Celtics are in the lead. They still have as good a chance as anyone, and probably better chance than anyone of re-signing him. And all they have to do is sort of give him enough confidence in their situation to make him want to stay. And I think also, he's probably also leaving himself some wiggle room just on the off chance that the Celtics don't pony up the full 5 year.
Yes. Here we go.
Max.
I'm glad you brought this up. Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. I kind of teased this particular show early on Friday with there's a quote from a Boston superstar made earlier this year that kind of helps explain this, and you kind of led me into it. All right, Pedro Martinez went on the Rich Eisen show earlier this year and talked about how he regretted telling the Red Sox that he would re-sign with them in the offseason, or something to that, I love Boston, I want to be here, all this stuff, and then they came back in the summer and lowballed him, right? Yeah. And then he ended up going to, I think, New York first, and then Philadelphia second. He went to the Mets and then the Phillies later on. He was like, I wish I didn't do that. I loved Boston, loved being there. I wanted to be there, But to have them come at me with the low ball offer that wasn't even the ballpark. He's like, the Yankees offered me more money than the Red Sox did. If you want to, lean on something for a second and chew on something for a second. But like, there's a reason why Kyrie's not going to come out and say like, okay, like I'm totally committed to the Celtics for I'm going to sign when it comes time to it. He does lose a little bit of leverage, and like I know he's going to get a full max from everybody basically, but there is this little small thing that if he says it right away, maybe Boston tries to take some money off the table. He's going to eventually end up getting the full max anyway, but he doesn't want to deal with like the riffraff in between. I think I'm not trying to put anything in Kyrie's mouth, but I do think that Pedro quote kind of sums this up a little nicely.
Yeah, and like you, I don't know for sure that that's what Kyrie's thinking, but I think that if it comes that he does end up signing this summer, and he says something along the lines of like, yeah, like if his agent or somebody says something along the lines of, we wanted to make sure that Kyrie got all the money he was due, I think that's perfectly reasonable, and it's probably one of the reasons why maybe the preseason proclamation he made wasn't maybe the best move, even if he did want to stay in Boston, even if he did want everybody to, sort of get off his back about it for at least for a few months. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a real problem that a lot of high level athletes run into is, you want to keep everybody happy. You want to keep the narrative positive for you, but also you have to do, like Kyrie said, like 100 times today, you have to do what's best for you. And, that includes making sure that you have enough leverage when you become an unrestricted free agent this summer.
You put it out on Twitter earlier on Friday that you were listening to Woj on some podcast. You said that there's a lot of wishful thinking out there when it comes to Kyrie. And I kind of agree with that. And I just want to add on this whole, like, he goes to the Knicks thing, right? So let's get this straight. Kyrie is going to go to New York, a place where they just had their best young star since Pat Ewing in the early 90s, late 80s, right? They just literally kicked him out the door, trying to kind of smear it a little bit as they kicked it. Like, because I don't know if you believe this thing like I do, but I don't think that all of a sudden in 2 minutes KP went from being mad in a meeting to being on the Dallas Mavericks. It just feels like that's a little misleading. But so Kyrie's gonna go join a franchise that just kicked their best young player off the team since the late 80s, early 90s. I just don't see, Kyrie mentioned when he was, in Boston, he was looking for a team that can help him grow, a stable front office, things that make up good culture. The Knicks haven't had any of that for the past, 20 years. I just have a hard time believing Kyrie's going to bolt to New York just because Durant's there.
Yeah, I think you can look at that a few different ways. I think that obviously the Porzingis deal that they're trying to make room there. And I think that there's been enough rumblings from Porzingis over the past few years that the Knicks very well might have sort of had like a few potential deals in their back pocket that they were willing to go to, and then obviously that was probably why that came together so quickly after that meeting. I personally think that the Knicks actually could be in a really good situation here, so I'm not sure I entirely agree with you, even though, the concerns about the stability of the front office are obviously valid. But, I mean, they really could be in a great situation in the next year or two. I mean, obviously, if they get KD and then they have all that cap space and then they also have this pick, and they have, multiple picks now from Dallas that could also be, either used or used in trades or whatever it might be. I mean, they could put together a pretty compelling situation. And I still believe that if they win the draft lottery and if they have a chance to draft Zion, I mean, I think that honestly might top any package, for Anthony Davis of any team in the league, and including the Celtics. I think Zion is the type of player who can, help save a franchise, if you're trying to prevent the franchise from being moved or anything like that. So, I think that there's a lot to like in New York's situation. But again, if you just kind of come back to like what's the easiest route for him to being on a championship contender, that is not New York. That is pretty clearly Boston, because they have all these pieces in place anyway. And there's a lot less sort of speculation about how many moves they have to make to become a contender. Whereas the Knicks right now, they have just a million things. They have a lot of room. They have a lot of promise, but they have to grow into all of that. Whereas the Celtics are pretty much already there. And then if they trade for Davis, that's kind of the be all and end all at this point.
Quick break from Tom and Tide. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. We have another huge week across the NBA coming up, some very exciting matchups, and there's only one place to get in all the action, and that's BetOnline.ag. Sports, casino, virtual casino, you name it, BetOnline.ag is CLNS's preferred sportsbook online. Use the promo code CLNS50 for that 50% sign-up bonus. That's CLNS50. Go to betonline.ag, your sportsbook experts, okay? Now, look, the big game is coming up later today, okay? Let's be honest about this. There's money to be had on this game. Patriots versus Rams, and right now on betonline.ag, it's Patriots minus 2.5. Let me tell you, let's give you some free advice here. I think the Patriots are going to win this game. Minus 2.5, I like that in terms of the Patriots. Grab that, okay? But not only that, I got some other ways for you to make money. And it's just Patriots related because I know a lot of people that listen to the show are Patriots fans. All right? I got an idea for you. Super Bowl MVP, okay? Plus 2,000 for James White, plus 1,200 for Sony Michel. Can't you see one of those guys going off in this game? You know, Sony Michel, 100 yards for 2 touchdowns, or James White, 13 catches, a touchdown for $117, something like that. I can see either of those scenarios happening. Those are great value picks. Get some free money today by putting some money on those 2 props if you're looking to, okay? So go to clnsmedia.com/win. Again, you want to go to clnsmedia.com/win because CLNS Media and BetOnline are offering you a 50% sign-on bonus. If you use our code, that promo code is CLNS50 for your 50% sign-on bonus today. That's betonline.ag. Yeah, let's move on to Davis. What do you make of all this stuff? It's hard to, it's hard. Again, I'm guessing here and grasping at things, but I don't think he gets moved before, the trade deadline. I think that's almost like impossible. It doesn't serve Dale Demps and the New Orleans Pelicans the best by trading, Anthony Davis now, for the Lakers' sake or for anybody. The Bucks move of trading Middleton and a bunch of other people to New Orleans doesn't make a lot of sense to me because Middleton's going to be a free agent this year, so it's like a rental of Middleton. It's not what you want to do. I think we learned that from the Knicks. You don't trade away like a young guy like that or a guy that's going to be an expiring contract potentially just for Anthony Davis. I don't think we're going to do that. But anyway, what do you make of all this stuff? It's hard to figure out where Boston kind of lies in the pantheon of offers that could be made, but obviously, they can make a very compelling offer for Davis, something that at least New Orleans have to think about. Do you think they can make the best offer, or do you think there's a better offer out there from another team?
I think they can make the best offer, presuming that the Knicks don't get the number 1 pick in the draft. I think I think the other thing to consider is not only can they make the best offer, they can make the best offer with probably the most confidence of any team, not the Lakers, because I still do think that a lot of this stuff that's coming out right now is basically noise from Clutch Sports, like you were talking about earlier. I think that, especially the stuff that's just he will not even consider re-signing with the Celtics. I think that after a year, especially a year playing with Kyrie Irving, who's his buddy, and, a year being a championship contender, because, he's never been a championship contender before, Davis. So I think that would make a difference as well. So, the Celtics can offer a big package and just be confident in the fact that, that they might at least be able to put themselves in position to potentially re-sign him the next summer. And that's more than a lot of teams can say. I think that, that there's obviously other teams out there that would probably be willing to that would have appealing packages that they could, try to put out there. But they're a lot less likely to put those out there if they don't think that they're going to be able to retain Davis. So I think that combination of things gives the Celtics a real advantage. And, like you said, they're just hoping that he gets through the deadline because if, they can't make a deal, before the summer. So my read on it is that the Celtics are in a good position to get him, and then you're just gambling. The payoff could be great. The payoff could be really costly, and that's the price of doing business in the NBA.
I'm assuming you think Tatum should be on the table, at some point if it gets that far, correct?
Yes, I do. And I think that that's sort of the trump card that the Celtics have to play, at this point is I think that they can build a better package than the Lakers without Tatum. But I think if you're the Pelicans, you can pretty reasonably leverage the Lakers into getting Tatum. Like the Celtics aren't going to, you could convince the Celtics probably that you would take the Lakers offer to get Tatum on the table without it sounding like a stretch, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think when I come down to it, I have to have one of the Jays stay in Boston, whether it's, Tatum or Brown. I have to keep one of them. And then the only thing I'm looking for potentially if I'm Danny, like I have a hard time trading away Marcus Smart. Maybe that's just because I love Marcus Smart so much and I've been standing for him ever since he was drafted, and now his 3-point shot has come around. I'd like to see how this looks. But, I don't know. Smart means so much to the culture of the team that, like, okay, maybe if you want to throw – if it's going to be Brown – in Smart, okay, maybe I can bite on that, and then the Celtics keep Tatum, and I think I'll be, I'll cry over it, no doubt, because I do love Marcus Smart so much. But if Tatum's on the table, I don't think I could put Smart on there. I'd be like, look, Tatum's the best player of anybody you're going to get, offered here. Smart is pretty pivotal to our future success. I think Tatum is going to be enough for you to kind of build around here. What does your best package look like in your point of view, Tom?
So obviously it depends on a few things. I think that if Davis kind of put it out there that he was willing to re-sign with Boston, or if the Celtics got that, or if that sort of came out before the deal, I think that you might have to consider bumping the package up. I mean, Anthony Davis is worth trading Jaylen and Tatum if you know that you're going to be able to keep him, and that's a huge risk to make. But I think that the Celtics can probably, like you said, they can probably get away with just stealing one of them. And I actually don't think it's ridiculous at all to want to hang on to Smart, who is basically the same age, a year or two younger than Kyrie and AD and, the guys that you would be building around, that having, and he's also under contract on what looks like it's going to be an extremely reasonable contract for 3 years after this one. So, I mean, that's actually not at all a ridiculous take to be like Marcus Smart is, definitely a valuable part. So, I mean, I think that you can, if you can do it without getting Smart in there, obviously they have other contracts that could be moved, and you would have to sort of feel out, how the Pelicans would feel about, the Horfords or the Haywards or whoever it might be. And, I think then you sort of make it work with picks from there. I think the complicated balancing act of any trade, especially one where the Celtics have so many assets to offer, is, if they trade Tatum, how many of the picks can they hang on to? Can they hang on to, can they give up maybe the Kings pick instead of the Grizzlies pick if they trade Tatum or whatever it might be? If they trade Jaylen, and they throw all the picks in, does that mean they get to keep Tatum? I don't know how that's going to totally break down here. And, that's one of the reasons why I'm glad I'm not Danny Ainge, because that's going to be a really complicated situation.
Yeah.
But, I think that you're right that both of the Jays probably will not be in the deal, assuming a deal happens. And, from there, kind of comes down to draft picks and the rest of the assets, I guess.
Yeah, I think that Memphis pick's getting rolled over to next year. And from there, again, you got to get in the crystal ball and figure out exactly, when, the timeline, turns around for Memphis. Because if they're going to deal Conley and Gasol off, they could be bad for a while. And that pick could be really juicy, or they could – I don't know what their path is to be, an upstart contender, because that Western Conference is still going to be loaded. It's just the way it is. And Memphis's, climb out of the basement might be a little bit tougher, especially when you look at, like, a team that has been – an utter, dumpster fire for a while. Phoenix seems to look like they've gotten at least a couple of players that can play, like Ayton. As much as people want to talk about Luka Doncic, like I actually enjoy watching Ayton play too, and he's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Devin Booker's really good. Let's see what happens with Josh Jackson. I've always been kind of a Josh Jackson fan because I know he plays hard. They're going to make a couple of moves to make that team a little bit better too. So that Memphis pick is, as much as you say it might have not looked like cool at the time, like, oh, Jeff Green for only a first round pick from Memphis, that's ridiculous. Now it's like, wow, Jeff Green might be getting traded for like a top 3 draft pick, and that is a complete steal for Danny Ainge. Like, once again, it's just, again, it's the asset chats that they have that's really, really interesting. And how deep does Danny go into that to get? Because again, we've all talked about it. We've interviewed people about it. I remember I had Gorman on in the summer. Like, Anthony Davis is the player Danny Ainge covets the most. So I think Danny would even, like, overpay almost. Again, he never overpays for anybody, but overpay almost to get Anthony Davis in this roster. And I think it would be more important now with Kyrie being weird. Like, how is Kyrie or Davis going to leave a situation when they're both in the same team, they're both friends? Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that it's worth, there's this idea that Danny Ainge doesn't offer up much for, stars, and I don't think that that's necessarily accurate. I think Danny doesn't offer up much for, stars that he's not that focused on getting. I don't know that I don't know that he was ever, I can't say for certain, but I don't know that he was ever that focused on like the Butlers and the Paul Georges. I think that, basically ever since Durant signed with the Warriors, they've been focused on, the Anthony Davis summers. Like, they've been focused on trying to get him. And, and when you look at the deal that the Celtics sent out for Kyrie, I mean, obviously at the time, everybody thought that was a crazy amount of value for Kyrie based on the market and based on, his wish list of teams and everything else. So, that was obviously proven wrong. I mean, the Celtics pretty clearly got the better end of that deal, but at the time it was an unprotected first from a team that was expected to be in the lottery. It was an injured Isaiah Thomas, but I don't know that anybody, outside the organization knew how injured he was. And then, it was Jay Crowder, who was a useful rotation player. And I mean, even Zizic has been kind of decent for Cleveland the last little bit here. So, I mean, that was a really hefty package to send out for Kyrie. And, that's because Danny values Kyrie a lot. Like, he thinks Kyrie is really, really good, obviously. So, when you start looking at Davis and you look at somebody who has been, the team's like main focus as far as acquisitions go for several years now, I think that, if Danny has to overpay, I don't think he's going to think twice about overpaying for Anthony Davis, especially if he thinks that there's any chance that they can keep him. And if he thinks that there's any chance that Davis means you keep Kyrie. I mean, that's the other thing as well.
Another quick break from the show with Tom Westerholm and tell you today's show is brought to you by 1 in 100. And guys and girls, I had no clue what 1 in 100 was, so I had to look it up. And here's what it is. It's really cool, actually. I think it's an awesome idea. Let's say you want to go to Celtics Lakers in the Garden, right? LeBron's coming back. Rondo's coming back. You have all these opportunities to boo every single Laker asset that could possibly be traded for Anthony Davis, right? But tickets in the secondary market are insane. Do you want a more affordable way to go to the game? Then give 1 in 100 a shot. All you got to do, log on to 1in100.co. That's 1, O-N-E-I-N, then the number 100.co. Click the game you want to go to, buy a raffle ticket for your chance to win a pair of tickets. Okay, the price of the raffle ticket is just 1/100th of the price of what 1 in 100 paid for the ticket. I know it's a lot, trust me. Still confused? I get it. Let's say 1 in 100 paid $1,000 for the pair. Your cost of raffle ticket is just $10, right? That's insane value, okay? 1 in 100 people get to buy a raffle ticket. Only 1 in 100 people, okay? You have 1 in 100 chance to win the tickets. Really that simple. It's the newest way to buy tickets. It's the coolest way to buy tickets, again, for a significantly lower price, all right? Score a pair of tickets for less than the cost of beer. Your first raffle ticket is free. After signing up, just log on to 1in100.co. That's ONEIN100.co. Feeling lucky? Give it a shot today. Yeah, let's finish up here with some actual basketball talk, because they do actually play a sport. It's not just like roster movement and player movement. There actually are games to be played. And one of the things recently I've been really encouraged about, I think a lot of people are really encouraged about, besides the Marcus Smart three-point shooting, which has been just an awesome revelation, but Jaylen Brown finding his confidence again has been really great. And I've said this a couple of times about Jaylen just in general. Like, first off, his shot is way better than everybody gives it credit for. The early part of the year where he was just struggling, it was obviously tied to this hand injury. But the one thing I love with Jaylen, and I will continue to say it, if he really reaches his potential like I think he can, he is just such a nightmare in transition, like just a complete nightmare. Because of how strong he is, and if his handle comes really around, and how fast he is, athletic he is, he's almost like unstoppable for a guy that size. And I when this team gets on the break, he's the first guy I look for in terms of like where is he on the basketball floor, because more likely than not, Jaylen is going to find a way to the rack, and if you get him the ball with a full head of steam, he's really tough to stop in that regard. But Jaylen's been, the past 2 months, really past month, but I'll go 2 just because it's been a gradual step, where his game has turned around, tremendously, and you can see sort of his confidence grow back. And as somebody who's looking at, maybe a potential deal for Anthony Davis, him turning his life around and getting his act together has been a real nice storyline for the Celtics the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about him getting to the rim. He's been finishing better. He's been obviously the 3-point percentage has just skyrocketed over the last little while. I think last time I looked, he was shooting something like 45% in his last like 5 games or something like that. I mean, he's just been lights out. And I mean, the Celtics obviously when he went to the bench, I think that there was like some real concern. I don't know about about like organizationally, but I think just kind of around the team, there was like some real concern about, what that meant for him, like about, has his development sort of paused. And I obviously, I think it might have started off as a confidence thing. And then, cause he struggled before his hand injury. He wasn't sharp to start the year at all. And then obviously he had that bad fall. He hurt his hand there. He told me that he had that pad on his hand that, that he had like all wrapped up, which, I mean, if you can imagine holding a basketball with a pad on the bottom of your palm, like that's just not a comfortable way to shoot a 3-pointer. So, he's had like sort of a lot of things at the start of the year. He had the new role. He had all these new players that were trying to work themselves into the system. And, I think after the last game, he said, this is like a similar team in terms of personnel, but it's a completely different team because of the people they've had to bring in. And I think he felt, he and Rozier probably felt the brunt of that more than anybody. So yeah, I mean, it's been good to see just, for his sake that over the last, month or whatever it might be that, he is getting back to the rim. He's getting comfortable in that sort of mid-range sort of post-up area where he does some really good work. And then, yeah, I mean, as a 3-point shooter, if he's hitting threes, the Celtics offense is just completely different because, he spaces things out so much better for everybody when he's doing that. And he's got just that lightning quick first step. Like he can get to the rim. I mean, he's like you said, like a fully realized Jaylen Brown is just a really, really impressive player.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting to I'm not going to do super hot take here, but I do think a lot of the Boston Celtics' future success this season, and that goes into the postseason, kind of falls on his shoulders a little bit. And I hate to do that to a guy like that, but like it's just got to a point where I don't know what Gordon's bringing anymore. Like I don't know. I'm just hoping that gradually he gains more confidence and becomes more comfortable on the floor. That's what I'm hoping for, but I can't rely on that, right? Just like the Knicks can't rely on cap space to bring 2 guys to New York, right? I just can't rely on that. I have to rely on something concrete, and Jaylen turning it around, I think, is a monumental thing for Boston as they start to kind of climb back into the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. Sadly, and I say this like really, really sincerely because I know some people will be like, oh, whatever. Look, no, I am actually like kind of heartbroken that Victor Oladipo is gone for the season. I love watching him play. I love watching Indiana play. They have a lot of fun players, but unfortunately they are just going to fall to the wayside here in the Eastern Conference. Boston has always had Philly's number. Again, prior to this Knicks game, Boston right now 32-19. They are 1 game back in the loss column of the 76ers, 3 back at Toronto, who's kind of scuffling a little bit, and it looks like Milwaukee's going to run away with this thing to be the number 1 seed. Boston getting up into that 2-3 spot is huge for home court issues, one, but like you look at some of these 4-5 matchups, and even Brooklyn, who can be kind of pesky, like you would, if you were Boston, you'd prefer to not play somebody like decently good in that first round, so you could maybe rest guys and get guys ready for a much tougher second and third round. Jaylen becoming an offensive, not force, but a reliable offensive weapon for the Celtics can make this transition to the 3 spot, the 2 spot easier, and then ultimately carry over to the playoffs. Again, not putting everything on Jaylen, but his recent, development is huge for their future, I think, Tom.
Yeah, and I would add Terry Rozier to that as well. I mean, he's been, obviously he's had a couple of games where he started and he played well, and obviously, I mean, I think we can all agree pretty much at this point that for whatever reason, starting is just a huge difference maker for him. But even before that, I mean, I felt like his defensive energy was really, really high, in the games coming off the bench. And the whole point of this team was supposed to be that their bench would just run opposing benches off the floor, and their starters would also be very strong. And that hasn't really been the case so far this season. And if that starts to be the case, then I think that we might see this team sort of round into what we all expected them to be, which was, a legit contender, because, they have the talent. And I don't think anybody's really contested the fact that they have the talent. It's just kind of a matter of putting it all together and making the pieces all fit and getting everybody comfortable in what really is sort of a unique role as a team.
Tom Westerholm from Mass Live. You can follow him on Twitter. You can follow all the stuff at Mass Live. Does a great job. Him and John Corrales crushing it for Mass Live and the Celtics beat. Filling in for your former coworker Jay King, who's going to move on the Athletic. But you guys do a fantastic job. Tom, a quick prediction on the Super Bowl, my friend.
My prediction is that it will be the first football game that I've watched all year.
Wow.
Nice. Patriots? They're
nice.
in it, right?
I like that.
I think they might win.
I like it. I like your style. All right, that's Tom Westerholm. You guys, thanks a lot, Tom. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
And that will do it for episode 300 of Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio video coverage of your Boston Celtics. But before we go, a couple of things. One, shout out to Tom Westerholm of Mass Live. Guy rules. Make sure you you follow him both at Mass Live and on Twitter. But also, big shout out to Adam Coughlin, who's traveling back from Atlanta, covering the big game, Patriots and Rams. He'll be back next week, okay? Just a little quick pinch hit here from me. Also, quick shout out to Nick, to Larry, to John, and make sure you guys follow us on CLNS Media and Celtics Beat. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Stitcher if you listen there. Leave us a rating and review. Make sure you subscribe to our CLNS Media YouTube channel. Get a 20,000 of you, almost 20,000 of you that do. You guys are amazing. I can't believe you guys. So much thankfulness from me and everybody else at CLNS Media. And Adam is back next week. Hey, Gino, let's get out of here.
Hello, I'm Dan Lothian, host of the Behind the Media podcast on the CLNS Media Network. Along with Jimmy Young, we dive into the biggest media headlines each week with honest, informed, and sometimes irreverent perspectives. It's not all serious. We deliver information and entertainment. As we like to say on Behind the Media, we find the interesting in media so you don't have to go searching for it. Listen to our podcast and get prepped for the next trip to the water cooler. Subscribe to Behind the Media wherever you get your podcast, or find us on www.clnsmedia.com.